My name is Peter, and I'm 34. At my own birthday celebration, my family insisted I should simply tolerate the fact that my brother was intimately involved with my wife. Before I described the instant, their smug expressions dissolved as my lawyer rose to her feet, bringing their entire universe of deceit crashing down. I'd be interested to know where this story is reaching you. It's always encouraging to know who is out there taking in these accounts. The atmosphere in that private room, with its dim lighting and dark wood paneling, was so tense you could carve it with a knife. This was meant to be a moment of joy, my 34th birthday, what some might call a new beginning. That's how my mother, Mary, had framed it when she booked this absurdly priced restaurant, a place where servers glided silently and water was perpetually refilled. No more conflict, Peter, she'd cooed over the phone, her voice coated in a sugary concern I'd grown to loathe. Just our family, just affection. It's time for us to mend. I let the word family linger in my thoughts. It left a bitter, burnt taste. I scanned the large, circular table. My father, Richard, was fixated on the crimson wine swirling in his glass, a practiced method of deflecting any real connection. It was his hallmark. My sister, Delilah, was busily typing on her phone beneath the table, a small, proud smile on her lips. I recognized that expression. She was giving her friends a live report on my supposed maturity, collecting social credit for her performance as the patient sister to a difficult sibling. And then there were the evening's main attractions, my younger brother, Mark, and my wife, Esther. They were seated beside each other, maintaining a deliberate and respectable gap, yet their shared energy was an undeniable magnetic pull. The effort they put into not looking at each other made their connection the most conspicuous thing in the room, a desperate, silent admission of their guilt. Mark, the eternal golden child, lifted his glass. He brandished the grin that had always enchanted our parents, his instructors, and every unsuspecting person he encountered. It was his primary weapon, and he used it skillfully. It no longer had any effect on me, not since I had spotted the faint reflection of his silly, worn-out Lakers hat in my wife's sunglasses from a photo she had smugly labeled, "Solo Reset to Peter," Mark began, his voice as smooth as the expensive wine he held. A man of profound grace, who has shown us all the meaning of forgiveness and the courage required to persevere through hardships to family and to healing. They all chimed in, their glasses clinking in a harmony of facets. My mother gazed at me, her face alight with pure, unvarnished victory. She believed she had succeeded. She thought she had finally molded me back into the shape she desired, that I had accepted my subordinate position in the family, forever beneath Mark and their version of events. I allowed a tight, small smile to form on my face. It required immense effort to conceal my true feelings. I took a slow drink of water, the ice making a soft sound against the glass. For a long moment, it was the only noise, like a ticking bomb. Then, I gave a nod. It was a tiny movement, almost invisible to a casual observer, but it was seen and understood from across the room. A woman seated at a separate, smaller table got to her feet. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored, dark pantsuit that exuded quiet power. My family had presumed she was a new romantic interest, a stand-in I'd brought along to demonstrate I was moving forward. They had offered her courteous but dismissive glances upon her arrival, assessing and quickly disregarding her. She approached our table, her heels making soft, deliberate clicks on the polished floor. She set her leather portfolio down on the pristine tablecloth, placing it squarely in the middle. "Good evening," she stated, her voice calm and clear, slicing through the stale, hypocritical air. My mother's smile wavered, and confusion clouded her eyes. Mark's wine glass paused on its way to his mouth. "I am Sarah Chun," she said, her penetrating gaze sweeping over each of them. "I am Peter Thompson's attorney." The quiet that descended wasn't mere silence, it was a vacuum. It drew out all the air, all the arrogance, and all the deception, leaving behind only a stark, frigid, and terrifying new reality. The show was finished, and my true birthday celebration was just getting underway. It began with a scent. It's strange how your whole world can be upended by something so trivial. For me, it was the smell of coconut and sea salt. Mark had just returned from what he described as a grueling week-long business conference in Sacramento. He came into the kitchen as I was preparing coffee, dropping his keys on the granite countertop with a sharp clatter, and the very air around him seemed to change. He smelled like a tropical getaway. It was a fresh, sweet fragrance that was instantly and nauseatingly familiar. It was the precise scent of Esther's new, ridiculously pricey body lotion, the one she'd recently purchased, claiming it made her feel like she was escaping, if only for a little while. "New aftershave?" I asked, striving to sound casual while keeping my back to him, focusing intently on pouring hot water over the coffee grounds. My hands were rock steady. "What?" "No, man," he replied, his response a little too fast, the words spilling out. Must have been the Uber from the airport. The guy had one of those air freshener trees. I turned with my mug in hand. He was already hurrying out of the kitchen, grabbing his gym bag, refusing to meet my eyes. That was the first alarm. A quiet warning in my subconscious, the kind you're taught to dismiss because the alternative is too horrifying to consider. But the alarms kept sounding. A few days later, it rang again, far more insistently. I was mindlessly browsing social media before bed when I came across a picture Esther had posted that day. It was a flawless selfie on a beach at sunset, the sky a glorious blend of orange and pink. The caption was engineered for effect, solo reset. Just me, the ocean, and my thoughts. So necessary, she looked lovely and peaceful. But I'm a man who pays attention to details, it's just my nature and what makes me a good financial analyst. You learn to spot what others overlook. My gaze fell upon her sunglasses, the large aviators she adored. There, in the curved reflection of the right lens, was a faint but distinct image of a man taking the photo with his phone. A man in a faded purple and gold Lakers cap. Mark's Lakers cap. The disgusting, sweat-stained thing I'd been urging him to throw out for years, the one he wore everywhere like a talisman. My blood turned to ice. It felt like a freezing flood surging through my veins. I zoomed in, my thumb trembling. The image was warped and indistinct, but it was him. There was no question. He hadn't been in Sacramento, and her trip was not solo. My immediate reaction wasn't fury but a profound, soul-crushing ache, followed by a surge of confusion. I had to be mistaken. I needed someone to confirm I was being irrational. So, I did what one is supposed to do and sought a reality check from my family. I called my sister, Delilah, first. I described what I had seen, my voice taut with a mix of anger and desperation. I wanted her to tell me I was insane but also to validate my fear. "Oh, Peter," she exhaled, her sigh a judgment in itself. "You're being paranoid again. You always overreact to the smallest things. Remember last year when you were convinced Dad was selling the lake house just because he mentioned a property tax increase? You drove yourself crazy over nothing, the lake house. Of course. My father had made a casual remark, and I'd worried because the house was our family legacy. They'd all treated me like I was hysterical, conveniently forgetting he'd later met with a realtor just to see they only remembered my overreaction. "This is different, Delilah," I insisted. This wasn't a casual remark. I saw him in her sunglasses in a reflection. "Peter? Come on. That's absurd." "You sound unhinged," she retorted. "You're stressed. Esther is probably just trying to get some breathing room. You two have been tense lately. Don't be so suffocating. The word was a stinging blow. Next, I steeled myself and called my parents. My mother, Mary, answered. I explained the situation once more, trying to present it as a collection of facts. Her reply was swift and utterly dismissive. "Peter, you know we adore you," she started, and my stomach knotted. Nothing good ever followed that phrase. But you have to acknowledge your own tendencies. You've had these abandonment issues since childhood. You perceive betrayal where there is none. Your brother loves you. Esther is a good, patient wife. You are manufacturing drama, and it's unfair to everyone." My father joined the call, his voice a low growl of support. "Your mother's right, son. You're working too much. You sound exhausted. Drop it before you turn nothing into a real issue. Abandonment issues, paranoid, suffocating, unhinged. It was a united front, a polished script with me cast as the villain. They weren't hearing me, they were diagnosing me, slotting my fears into a pre-written narrative about Peter, the fragile one. This is their method. It's what they've always done. They make you doubt your own perceptions until you believe you are the one who is broken. And for a short time, it almost succeeded. I began to second-guess myself. Perhaps Delilah was right. Maybe it was a random man on the beach with a similar hat. Maybe the coconut fragrance was just an Uber. My mind was a battlefield. My professional instincts were at odds with the family story I'd been force-fed my entire life. Mark is the golden child to be protected, Peter is the serious one who worries too much. But I couldn't ignore the feeling, a splinter in my mind that was beginning to fester. So, I did what I knew best when confronted with disorder. I started gathering data. I bought a simple black notebook and a fine-tipped pen. That evening, after Esther was asleep, I sat in my office and opened it. The act of writing it down was a small rebellion. March 3rd, Mark claims to be in Sacramento. Esther posts a selfie from Santa Monica, saying it's a solo trip. Reflection in glasses shows a man with what appears to be Mark's Lakers cap. Caption overemphasizes solo. March 10th, Mark returns. His bag and coat smell strongly of coconut and sea salt. Esther's new lotion is Coconut Kiss. Mark's excuse, Duber air freshener. He was visibly agitated when asked. Each entry was a brick in a wall of facts I was building to shield myself from their manipulation. The gaslighting became a collaborative effort. At the next family dinner, I remained quiet, observing. It was like watching a performance where everyone but me knew their lines. I saw how Esther and Mark carefully avoided eye contact. I saw how my mother would redirect conversations away from their recent travels. "You've been quiet, Peter," my father remarked, passing the potatoes. It was an accusation. "Just tired," I replied flatly. My mother seized the opportunity, her eyes gleaming with feigned concern. "Still not sleeping well, dear? Your father and I are worried. You should really speak with someone. Maybe call Spencer. Spencer, my childhood friend, now a psychiatrist." The last time she mentioned was a difficult period after a major work deal collapsed. I was burned out and anxious. Spencer had been helpful. Now, my mother was twisting that vulnerability into a lifelong condition, a tool to use against me. "You know," she continued, "maybe you should consider going back on something for a while, just to stabilize you." The message was clear, my suspicion was a symptom of my illness. I looked at Esther, begging with my eyes for her to defend me. She just stared at her plate, a silent, complicit partner in my character assassination. Later, I made an excuse to use the upstairs bathroom. Esther's purse was on the counter, slightly ajar. I had never invaded her privacy in our 8 years together. It felt like a profound betrayal of trust, but I realized that trust had already been shattered. My hands trembled as I reached inside. My fingers found a folded piece of paper. It was a hotel receipt. La Serena Villas in Santa Barbara. 2 nights, 1 king bed. The date was from 3 weeks prior, the same weekend Mark claimed to be at a team retreat and Esther had told me she was at a spa with college friends. I snapped a photo of the receipt with my phone, my heart pounding. I quickly returned the receipt, fixed her purse, and splashed my face with cold water. The man in the mirror was pale and haunted, but his eyes were clear. I was not crazy, and I had proof. On the drive home, I pulled over. I couldn't be in the car with her. I scrolled through my contacts and called the one person I knew wouldn't diagnose me, Jason. "What's wrong, man?" "You sound awful," he said. My voice came out as a strangled whisper. "I think Mark is sleeping with Esther." There was a heavy pause, not of disbelief, but of a friend processing terrible news. "Okay," Jason said finally, his voice solid. "What's your evidence?" I told him everything, the scent, the photo, my family's reaction, and the hotel receipt. "That's a smoking gun, Peter," he said. "What's your plan?" I don't know, I admitted, my voice finally cracking. They're all against me. They'll find a way to explain it away. Forget them, Jason said, his tone like steel. The truth is what matters. You need more than a receipt. You need something irrefutable, something they can't spin. Build a fortress of facts so high they can't get over it. Get everything, and call me. I'm here. I hung up, a single tear of rage and gratitude tracing a path down my cheek. The war in my mind was over. My instincts had prevailed. Now, a different war was set to begin. I put the car in drive, the black notebook on the passenger seat beside me. It had many empty pages left, and I intended to fill every single one. The confrontation with Esther was a premeditated catastrophe. I knew how it would end, but a small, naive part of me had to try. I had to offer her one final opportunity to be the woman I had married, not the person who was betraying me with my brother. I waited until the next evening, when the silence of our home felt suffocating. I had her sit on the living room couch, the same one where we once planned a future that now seemed like a distant dream. I didn't yell. I simply slid my phone across the coffee table, the clear image of the Santa Barbara hotel receipt glowing on the screen. "Can you tell me what this is, Esther?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Her eyes darted to the screen. For a fleeting moment, I saw it, pure panic. Her composure crumbled, and I glimpsed the guilt and fear. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by an Oscar-worthy performance. Her face contorted in sorrow, and tears welled up on cue. "You went through my purse," she sobbed, her voice thick with manufactured hurt. "I can't believe you, Peter. This is your paranoia, your jealousy. It's choking me." "Just answer the question, Esther," I said, my patience wearing thin with each crocodile tear. "Were you in Santa Barbara with my brother?" "No," she shrieked, jumping up. "It was a girls' trip." "My God, you are being insane. You're twisting things and inventing conspiracies because you can't face your own issues. I have been trying so hard to fix us, and you accuse me of this." She was a master of deflection. She took my evidence and reframed it as a symptom of my own mental illness. She wasn't the deceiver, I was the paranoid one. She wasn't the adulterer, I was the suffocating husband. "You're sick, Peter," she said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You need professional help." "I can't live like this," she stormed out, slamming the bedroom door with a resounding crack. I was left in the silence, the incriminating proof still glowing on my phone. She had not only lied, she had weaponized my anguish to try to destroy me. In that moment, the last fragment of love I held for her was violently extinguished. In its place, something cold and resolute began to form. There was nothing left to salvage, only justice to be sought. I called Jason the next morning. My voice was transformed, the pleading uncertainty was gone. "She denied it all," I stated flatly. "Called me sick, of course she did," Jason replied grimly. "That's what liars do when cornered." "So, what's your next move?" "You can't stay in that house with her." "It's toxic. I'm not leaving my house," I said, a cold determination solidifying within me. "I paid for it. I'm not the one who broke my vows. I need something undeniable, something legal." "I know someone," Jason said after a moment. "He's not cheap, but he delivers. His name is Enzo Moretti. Ex-cop, now a private investigator. He specializes in high-asset infidelity, the really ugly cases." "Give me his number," I said, without a moment's hesitation. Meeting Enzo was like stepping into another reality. His office was in a plain brick building in an industrial part of town. The space was sparse, clean, and smelled of stale coffee. Enzo himself was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and eyes that seemed to pierce right through you. He had a gravelly voice and a handshake that felt like it could shatter bone. I laid my black notebook on his desk, showed him the photos, and recounted the entire story. He listened without speaking, his face an unreadable mask. When I finished, he flipped through the notebook. "Smart," he grunted. "Keeping a log. Most people come to me with feelings. I can't work with feelings. I need data. He pushed the notebook back to me. This is a good start, but it's circumstantial. Not enough for a court. What do you need? I asked. Digital and physical footprints, he said. Phone records, GPS data from their cars, credit card statements, hotel security footage. I need to build a timeline so airtight they can't escape it. He leaned back. This kind of work costs. My retainer is $50,000. It was a staggering sum, a huge gamble. I looked him straight in the eye. When can you start? A flicker of what might have been respect crossed his face. I've already started, he said, sliding a contract across the desk. That week was an eternity. I moved into the guest room. Esther and I were like phantoms in our own home. Outwardly, I was a machine. I went to work, hit the gym, and told my parents we were working through things. I played the part of the dutiful, if troubled, husband and son. I let them believe they were winning. Inside, I was a wreck. The only thing that kept me sane was the thought of Enzo, my personal bulldog, hunting for the truth. During that week, I received a cryptic message from my cousin, Victoria, who worked in compliance at Mark's investment bank. Hey Peter. Weird question, and please don't say I asked. Is everything okay with your joint finances? Something odd is happening with some of Mark's accounts. Looks like he's moving money around to avoid reporting thresholds. Just be careful. My blood ran cold. This was more than an affair. What else was he doing? I messaged her back, can't talk, but thank you. Please be careful. A week after our first meeting, Enzo called my office. Now when I arrived, a thick folder sat on his desk. He opened it and slid 6 glossy photographs across to me. The first showed Mark and Esther checking into a chic hotel in Napa. The second, them holding hands in the hallway. The third, her head on his shoulder in the elevator. The fourth, him kissing her neck. The images were crystal clear, time-stamped from June 17th, our wedding anniversary, the weekend Mark claimed to be on a company retreat and Esther at a yoga spa. The air rushed out of my lungs. I had known, but seeing the casual intimacy in high-resolution color was like being stabbed. There's more, Enzo said, turning his computer monitor. It was a spreadsheet detailing a joint home equity line of credit I'd forgotten we had. He's been siphoning money for 6 months, Enzo explained. Small amounts at first. It adds up to $62,400. Where did it go? I whispered. Enzo clicked a few keys, and a business license application for a new women's clothing boutique appeared, with Esther Thompson listed as the owner. The $62,000 was her startup capital. He had stolen my money to fund my wife's dream business. Enzo still wasn't done. This is the part you're not going to like, he said, and pressed play on an audio file. It was a legally obtained phone call. Just need to keep him compliant for a little while longer, a woman's voice said. It was my mother, Mary. He's getting suspicious again. He can't find out about the trust fund. Richard agrees. Once Mark's promotion is finalized and Esther's business is stable, we can figure out how to manage Peter. He's emotional. He'll get over it. A trust fund? Your maternal grandmother left a significant trust fund for you and your sister, Enzo explained. You were meant to get control on your 30th birthday. Your mother, as trustee, filed a motion to delay your access, citing emotional instability. A motion she has refiled every single year since, with supporting letters from your father and sister. I stared at the screen. She hadn't just covered for them, she had systematically and financially sabotaged me for years, all to protect her golden boy. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a lifelong conspiracy. My grief evaporated, consumed by a fire of pure, cold rage. I looked up. Enzo saw the change in me. So, he said quietly, what's the play, Thompson? I'm not just filing for divorce, I said, my voice steady. I'm burning their whole world to the ground. Enzo nodded, a grim smile on his lips. For that, he said, pulling a heavy, black metal business card from a drawer, you're going to need a shark. The card read, Sarah Chun, Esquire. Chun and Associates. Financial fraud and high asset litigation. Set up a meeting, I said, my voice like ice. Tell her I'm coming with a mountain of evidence. And tell her I want to go all the way. The meeting with Sarah Chun took place in her office on the 50th floor of a skyscraper, a minimalist space that radiated ruthless efficiency. Sarah herself was the embodiment of her office, sharp, intense, and impeccably dressed. Enzo briefed me, she said, cutting straight to the point. Show me what you have for the next hour. I laid out the entire sordid tale, the notebook, the photos, the financial statements, and the soul-crushing audio recording of my mother. Sarah listened, her steepled fingers pressed to her lips. They didn't just betray you, Mr. Thompson, she said when I finished, her voice crisp. They've committed wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud, and a breach of fiduciary duties related to this trust. This isn't a divorce case. It's a multi-front war. Our goal isn't just to win. It's total, unconditional victory. The words resonated in the hollow space where my heart had been. What's the plan? I asked. The plan, she said, a dangerous hint of a smile on her lips, is to let them think they've won. You are going to become compliant, broken, and apologetic. The bigger their confidence, Mr. Thompson, the harder their fall. So I became an actor. I went home and apologized to Esther, telling her she was right, that my paranoia had gotten the better of me. The relief on her face was nauseating. I called my mother and apologized for being so dramatic. She was ecstatic. Oh, Peter, I knew you'd see reason, she chirped. That's my mature boy. Behind the scenes, my team moved with incredible speed. Sarah's lawyers drafted ironclad filings. Enzo discovered that my uncle Greg, my father's business partner, had helped Mark set up an offshore account. Jason, my digital ghost, mapped their entire digital lives, recovering deleted texts and emails. But it still felt incomplete. I didn't understand the why, the lifetime of feeling like an outsider in my own family. That's when an insane hunch took root. Sarah, I said during a late-night strategy session, I need a DNA test. Me and my father, that's difficult, Peter, she said. You can't compel him without a court order. I know, I replied. I'll have to get it myself. The opportunity arose unexpectedly. My father called, asking me to pick up some old boxes from the garage. It was the perfect excuse. I drove to my childhood home, which now felt like a foreign land. We made awkward small talk as he drank a beer. I watched him set the bottle down on a workbench. When I left, carrying boxes of old trophies, I also palmed the beer bottle, wrapping it carefully in a rag. It felt illicit, but I was past caring. I drove it straight to a private lab Enzo had recommended. The 2-week wait for the results was agonizing. During that time, the plan shifted. My sudden compliance was making Mark nervous. Then, the ambush. I came home from work to find my entire family, my mother, father, Delilah, Mark, Esther, and Spencer, my psychiatrist friend, waiting in my living room. It was an intervention. Peter, we're here because we love you, my mother began, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. Spencer took the lead. Your family has noticed some erratic behavior lately, he said, holding a clipboard. Unusual financial decisions. My retainer payment to Enzo. We think it would be best if you considered a voluntary stay at a wellness facility, a psychiatric hospital. They were trying to have me legally declared mentally incompetent. They wanted to gain power of attorney, to control everything. I was trapped. I looked at their faces, my mother's cold determination, Mark's smug concern, Esther's calculated pity. They were a wolf pack closing in for the kill. For one terrifying moment, I thought they might win. Then I saw the flicker of triumph in Mark's eyes. Something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath, let my shoulders slump, and looked at them with manufactured confusion and hurt. You're right, I said, my voice quiet, defeated. The tension in the room instantly evaporated. I haven't been myself. I need help. I looked at Spencer. I'll think about the wellness center. I will. But first, my birthday dinner is in a week. Let's just have one last nice evening as a family. To say goodbye for a while, it was the perfect gambit. It appealed to their sense of control. My mother smiled, a general accepting the sword of her vanquished foe. Of course, dear. One last nice dinner they left, high on their victory. They thought they had caged me, but they had just handed me the key. The birthday dinner wasn't going to be a surrender. It was going to be a slaughter. And the DNA lab results were due in 2 days. The night of the dinner, I dressed for war at a black suit, crisp white shirt, and a blood-red tie. The man in the mirror was a stranger, his eyes cold and focused. I arrived at the restaurant an hour early, did a final walkthrough with the manager, whose discretion I'd secured with a thick envelope of cash, confirmed the seating, made sure Jason was in place at a nearby table recording, and gave a subtle nod to Sarah Chun, who was sitting at the bar, perfectly camouflaged as my stunning new date. My family arrived radiating smug victory. "You're looking so much better, Peter," my mother cooed, patting my cheek. The small talk was excruciating, a masterclass in denial. After the main course, Mark stood up, tapping his wine glass. This was it, the opening act of their final victory lap. "I'd like to make a toast," he began, his million-dollar smile in place. "To my brother Peter. A man of incredible grace. He's shown us all what true strength and forgiveness look like. So here's to moving forward." To family, they all murmured, a chorus of hypocrites. I let the moment hang in the air. Then I slowly tapped my own water glass. The sharp, clear ring cut through the murmurs. "Thank you, Mark," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "That was a beautiful speech. And it's true, I have been doing a lot of thinking since our little intervention. I've realized you were all right." I let my eyes drift over each of them. I did have a problem. My problem was that I was trying to solve a complex legal and financial conspiracy with my emotions. And as you've all helpfully pointed out, my emotions are not my strong suit. So, I hired better tools from that cue. Sarah Chun stood from the bar and walked to our table. Her arrival was a silent bomb. "I believe you all know who I am from the intervention," she said into the dead silence. "I'm Sarah Chun, Peter's attorney." She placed her portfolio on the table and produced 5 thick, professionally bound dossiers, sliding one in front of Mark, Esther, Mary, Richard, and Delilah. "What the hell is this?" Mark sputtered. "That," I said, standing to my full height, "is the truth. In a format you can't dismiss." Esther's hands trembled as she opened hers to a high-resolution photo of her and Mark kissing in the Napa Hotel elevator. She made a strangled sound and slammed it shut. Mark ripped his open to see the same photos, followed by copies of his credit card statements detailing charges for hotels, dinners, and jewelry for Esther, all highlighted. Then came the bank records from my home equity line of credit. Delilah found page after page of her own text messages, recovered by Jason, where she coordinated the gaslighting campaign with our mother. My mother stared in horror at a financial audit of the credit line, showing her as a co-signer, and a full transcript of the audio recording where she spoke of keeping me compliant and illegally hiding my trust fund. "This is illegal," she whispered, her face ashen. "It was a legal wiretap, Mary, authorized by a judge," Sarah chimed in coolly. My father, Richard, was the only one who hadn't opened his dossier. He was just staring at me. "Peter, this has gone too far," he said, his voice weak. "I am your father, and I am telling you to stop." I held his gaze. "That's the thing, Richard," I said, my voice dropping. "That's the final piece of the puzzle." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a single sealed envelope, sliding it across the table to him. "I recently found out you're not." He tore it open. It was the official, notarized report from the DNA lab. His eyes scanned the damning conclusion, asterisk based on the analysis of the genetic markers, the probability of Richard Thompson being the biological father of Peter Thompson is 0% asterisk. He dropped the paper. The table fell into a profound, bottomless silence. Judge Harmon, my godfather, who was sitting at the end of the table, suddenly looked extremely ill. The uncanny resemblance between us, a long-running family joke, was suddenly cast in a horrifying new light. My mother looked from the paper, to me, to Judge Harmon, and a terrible, silent understanding passed between them. Her face went even whiter. The conspiracy wasn't just about an affair, it was about a lie rotting at the core of our family for 34 years. Her obsessive protection of Mark, her true son, and Richard's lifelong distance all made a sick, twisted kind of sense. "Happy birthday to me," I said quietly into the void. The chaos that followed was predictable. Esther was sobbing. Mark was yelling about lawsuits. My mother was catatonic. Sarah Chun stepped forward again. "Mr. Thompson," she said to Mark, her voice cutting through the noise, "my client has already filed a comprehensive report with the state's Financial Crimes Division. The same goes for the fraudulent management of the trust fund. You should expect to hear from their investigators. I suggest you find competent legal counsel." She then turned her cool gaze to Esther. "And Ms. Thompson, we will be filing for divorce first thing in the morning on grounds of adultery and financial fraud. We are confident Mr. Thompson will retain the house and all other significant marital properties they were broken. They had come to celebrate their power over me, and I had turned the tables so completely they would never recover. The truth hadn't just set me free, it had annihilated their world." The rest of the evening was a controlled demolition. They didn't storm out, they crumbled, deflating like punctured balloons. Mark was the first to try and fight back, but his efforts were weak. "You can't do this, Peter. This is slander." Sarah, calmly packing her portfolio, didn't bother to look up. "I certainly hope so," she said dryly. "It will make serving him the subpoena that much easier." Mark stared at her, then at me, his eyes pleading for the old Peter to reappear. He got nothing. He grabbed his coat and fled. Esther was next. The tears were gone, replaced by ugly fury. "You're a monster, Peter," she whispered. "Happy isn't the word, Esther," I replied, my voice even and low. "Vindicated is closer. But honestly, I just feel done." The finality in my tone was more devastating than any shouting match. She flinched, gathered her purse, and walked away. That left the architects of my misery, Mary, and the man I had called my father, Richard. Mary was frozen, her carefully constructed world shattered. Judge Harmon, my biological father, had quietly excused himself moments earlier. Richard finally looked at me, his eyes hollow and empty. He had been a victim too, in a way, but his weakness had made him complicit. "Peter," he rasped, "I swear to God, I didn't know." I looked at him. "Didn't you?" I asked quietly. "Or was it just easier not to look too closely?" He had no answer. He slowly stood up, a stooped, broken man, and walked out of my life. I felt nothing. Now it was just my mother and me. All of it, she finally whispered, her eyes unfocused. All of it was to protect him. Because he was Richard's. The legitimate 1 inch. The raw, ugly truth hung between us. "And now you have nothing left to protect," I said. It was a statement of fact. I stood up, put my napkin on the table, and turned to leave. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jason. "By the way, about Esther's boutique. I bought her defaulted business loan this afternoon for pennies on the dollar. I own her now. Consider it handled." A small, cold smile touched my lips. The boutique, the symbol of her affair, funded by my stolen money, was now in the hands of my most ruthless ally. I looked back at my mother one last time. She was just a small, broken woman sitting alone at a large, empty table. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. The storm inside me had passed. The constant chatter of doubt and anger was finally silent. For the first time in my life, I was standing in the quiet that followed, completely and utterly on my own. And I was okay with that. The war was over. Now, the rebuilding could begin. A year is both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. The first few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, which I gratefully delegated to Sarah. The divorce was finalized with brutal speed. Esther took a small settlement and disappeared, reportedly moving back to her hometown in Ohio. Jason foreclosed on her boutique, sold the assets, and donated the profits to a shelter for victims of domestic abuse. Mark and my mother's case dragged on, but they were ultimately fired, blacklisted, and forced to sell the family house to pay their legal bills. Their perfect world was irrevocably shattered. I sold the house I had shared with Esther. It was tainted. I leased a simple apartment downtown and poured myself into my work and therapy with a tough, no-nonsense professional. The only person from that life I still spoke to was my cousin Victoria. She had chosen loyalty to the truth, and I would always admire her courage. We met for coffee about a year after the infamous dinner. "So," she said, with a little smile, "I heard Uncle Greg is trying to sell the lake house." The lake house. The one place from my childhood that held genuinely happy memories. The place my grandmother had promised would be mine. "He's handling the sale for your mom and Richard," she continued. Richard moved out, by the way. I took a sip of coffee, and a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. "He can't sell it," I said simply. Victoria looked confused. "Why not?" "Because," I said, grinning, "I bought it last month through a blind shell corporation. The deal closed on Tuesday." "He's trying to sell a property that already belongs to me." Victoria's jaw dropped, then she broke into a huge grin. "You are scary sometimes, Peter Thompson." "In the best possible way. I'm just tired of being polite," I replied. I decided it was time to reclaim my own legacy, on my own terms. That evening, I drove to the lake house. It was mine. The key felt solid and real in my hand. I walked through the quiet, dusty rooms, but the memories weren't painful anymore. They were just history. I walked out onto the back deck as the sun was setting over the still water. It was peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Peter, it's Esther. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was lost and insecure. I hope one day you can find peace." I read the message. Maybe she was sorry, maybe she wasn't. It didn't matter. Her apology was for her, not for me. My peace was not dependent on her remorse. Without a second thought, I deleted the message and blocked the number. I turned my phone off and sat down in an old chair facing the sunset. The air was cool and clean. I was finally, truly home. The lake house became my sanctuary. The legal battles concluded. Mark and my mother pleaded guilty to lesser charges, receiving hefty fines and 5 years of probation. Judge Harmon quietly took early retirement and moved to Florida. I never spoke to any of them again. My victory wasn't in public vindication, it was in private peace. It was in rebuilding genuine connections. Jason and his family came up often, their laughter chasing away the old ghosts. Victoria became the sister I never truly had. We created new, healthier traditions. One crisp autumn evening, Jason and I were sitting on the deck in comfortable silence. My phone buzzed with a final closing document from Sarah's office. A year ago, that email would have consumed me. Now, I glanced at the subject line and archived it without opening it. It no longer had any power over me. "You know," I said, looking out at the calm water, "they spent their whole lives chasing a legacy that was built on a lie. They thought that was wealth." Jason looked at me, waiting. "They were wrong," I said, an easy smile reaching my eyes. "The greatest wealth is peace." He nodded, raising his coffee mug in a silent toast. "To peace, my friend." I raised my mug back to him. "To peace." Thank you for listening to my story. It was a long, painful journey, but one that led me to a place of strength and peace. Have you ever been in a situation where your gut told you something was wrong, even when everyone close to you insisted you were crazy? Please share your experience in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if this story resonated, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Take care of yourselves.